we did an update to the cinema cameras for the Pocket Cinema camera. So that's the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, Pocket Cinema Camera 6K, to now be used with their HDMI output into the ATEM Mini and also the new ATEM Mini Pro that you mentioned. So with these updates, we're now able to use them as studio cameras. So instead of them just being a cinema camera, they're now a full-on studio camera, including the ability to have tally. So you would have red tally if you're on air, green tally if you're on preview, and then there's actually an orange light that would illuminate if it's recording. Because with this new update, you're able to not only have full shading control in the ATEM software of the ATEM Mini and the ATEM Mini Pro, but you're also able to put those pocket cinema cameras into record while you're doing a live event. So if we were using them for this live stream, we could be streaming, but we could also hit record on those cameras, and they would record Blackmagic Raw internally, so we could recreate the live stream content with really high resolution images from the Blackmagic Raw.
Yeah, that's awesome. And are you able to? There were some updates also with being able to control the color as well. I think we see it on screen right now.
Yeah, so the full camera shading. So I'd be able to adjust the color. Depending on the lenses, you also have zoom and focus controls if those lenses allow for it, which is great. And it's, for a one-man band like myself, where I'm using Pocket Cinema camera and a ATEM Mini Pro, then it makes it a lot easier to adjust in the software than having to get up and down all the time.
And what was sort of the evolution of this with the cinema cameras versus you have some of the broadcast cameras, some of the other cameras, and you just cut out Bob, magic of live streaming. But we're going to have this whole interview online. There you go, Bob. Let me just bring you back up. There we go.
All right. Yeah. So I think I heard the question, which was why this camera as opposed to the other
cameras. Yes.
Yeah. So the Pocket Cinema Camera 4Ks have the HDMI output, and the Ursa Mini, those are SDI. So where this one comes into play is that the guys were able to use some some data lines on the HDMI to get back to the camera to give the instruction sets. And it's really clever that they were able to pull that off. But this also, because these cameras have built-in viewfinders, they really lend themselves to be converted into a full-on studio camera. And because the ATEM Mini line is the HDMI, now we can use the other cameras in our other ATEMs that have SDI in and out and do the camera control through those. But yeah, this is just
you have your bigger ATEMs in that case, right? The larger.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And in the bigger ATEMs, using the pockets with HDMI out, you don't get the same kind of workflow. So it's really just a matter of horses for courses. And in this case, and especially now that we're all hunkered down in our homes, I'm using a green screen now, the ability to use these pocket cameras and an ATEM Mini or Mini Pro and, give yourself a nice little studio setup is really impressive for the price points.
Yeah, it's an extremely impressive layout and control over what you can do. And so these updates, these were just firmware updates. So if you already have any of these Blackmagic cameras, and also if you have just the original ATEM, it will work with that, correct?
Yeah, the ATEM Mini, the original one, gets the update to be able to do the camera control, which was really cool.
That's awesome. And there we go, the Disappearing Act. I believe everyone's internet has been taxed in these crazy times. There you go, Bob.
Everybody's on bandwidth.
Yeah, we're just all trying to steal the bandwidth. Everyone wants their piece of bandwidth. What was like? Oh, so yeah, one also follow-up question with the, super impressive that you kind of have this two-way communication over the HDMI. Is that something that if other camera manufacturers wanted to tap into, it's an option, or is it just sort of restricted to the Blackmagic Pocket?
Right.
For now.
Sure. At this point, I don't think that we've released that as part of the SDK. I'm not sure if we will or not. My guess is that in order to do that, we probably need to do a little bit more work to make it easier for them to do that. But we have allowed for third-party manufacturers to tie into our ATEM products as well as the cameras and whatnot with an SDK. So I'm not sure what the plans are there, but we'll have to watch this space.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the new ATEM Mini Pro, and sort of what some of the highlights, and we'll kind of get into some other questions. But what are the main highlights of what this adds to the ATEM Mini?
Sure. So building on to the ATEM Mini line, what we did with the Pro was we put in some really cool features, including an encoder that's built in. So this way the streaming gets done, the processing for the encoding of the streaming gets done internally inside the box, and then through the through the Ethernet port, you tie it into a computer that has internet access, and it'll just stream directly to the services. So in the services, we have Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube in the software. But through some editing of the XML files, you can put in your own default services. And of the ones that are included, what you do is you go to that service and you go to set up a stream, and you find the key that they provide. You cut and paste that into the ATEM software.
Yep. And I believe, there you go, you're back. Hold on,
Internally.
There you go. Sorry.
Yeah, the good part about being able to handle the encoding in the box is that the power of the our encoder generates a stream that doesn't have drop frames, and drop frames can happen when the CPU of the computer you're trying to stream with gets overloaded. And this way, the computer that it's connected to is not doing any of the encoding. You can just use that to, say, control the ATEM software, and that reduces the load. And in theory, if you had your own streaming capability, ability to stream to a direct link, you could really put the bandwidth up to 70 megabits per second, which would be pretty nice.
That is impressive. That was actually one of my follow-up questions, as far as what, if there was a cap as far as what the maximum it could encode at and output at. So is it 70, or is that like a theoretical?
Well, no, it's 70 megabits per second is the top end. It's 60 frames per second, and that's based on our look at we have, I think there's 6 different stages of quality, all from 3 megabits per second up to 70.
Okay, and are those drop-down settings you can choose from, or is that like sort of you have to dig in the XML type to access that?
No, those are definitely in the drop-down menu, which is real easy for people to set up. And as I said earlier, if you modify your XML so now you have additional drop-downs to go to those services, that's really a one-time thing unless you go to add another service. So it's not super difficult to get that set up. And once it's set up, then you're set up.
Pull up. All right, yes, I got a shot of
there. You go.
Your XML. So it's the main thing with XML is adding additional services, or like a restreaming service like Switchboard, or like a Twitch, or you said Twitch was supported, but like LinkedIn Live or one of the other options, right? Nice. And so yeah, it's just kind of highlight on the main update, the encoding part.
Yep. And then I'll tell you another couple things that are different. Is we have the ability to put the cameras into record, so you can record in camera in Blackmagic RAW for later use while you're doing a stream. And then if you're streaming out of the Ethernet port, then the USB-C output becomes an output that you could plug a disk in and record to that. And then what you're doing is you're recording the entire streaming output at the same resolution that you're streaming. So you can't have two different rates, because there's only the one encoder. But what you're able to do is, so if you're streaming out at 45 megabits per second, you can record that 45 megabit per second stream on that other output. So that's, a big advantage. And then the other one that is in there is the multi-view. So on the aux output on the previous model, the first model, you get either any of the 4 cameras or program or preview. And with this, you could select any of the 4 cameras, the program output or the multi-view output. And all of those buttons are actually on the panel themselves, including the buttons to turn on and off the stream and to put the cameras in to record or stop them from the recording. And those buttons are all on the hard panel, which is really cool. And but the multi-view, not only does it show you all 4 inputs to your switcher, it also shows you what's in the media player, which is the still store. It shows you a representation of the recording, whether it's recording or not recording, and same with the stream, whether the audio section. So it shows you all the audio meters for all of the inputs and the program output and the 2 microphone inputs. So you have those at a glance. So right now, like I said, I'm using my own ATEM Mini Pro, and I have a green screen behind me, so I'm keying in this picture, and then I have the multi-view over here so I can check to make sure that my audio is still going up and down here. And so those features are really nice, and those were an add-on. And a lot of the requests, for multi-view and things like that came from the first product, and we were happy to be able to roll out another model. And of course, the timing of all this, given where we were all hunkered down, is pretty fortunate for everybody, including
it's very appropriate timing for that. And also there's been a shortage of all sorts of streaming hardware everywhere. It's been very hard to find any device that could connect a camera to a computer because we are all trying to stream. I think the big thing, obviously, the hardware encoding. That's just huge because as we started the stream and had issues with the stream, I'm using software encoding right now, so it's taxing my computer with all these graphics, all these other things going on.
Right.
So having just that dedicated piece of hardware where it's like, hey, your job is to encode the stream and not worry about other stuff, that's huge. You mentioned the buffering feature to prevent drop frames. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Is it basically buffering? Is it adding a delay to the feed just to have a little bit of buffer? And do you have any control over that?
Well, it's all done automatically, but basically because you're throwing hardware at it and hardware encoder, it guarantees that you're not dropping frames as you're building that stream. And with any encoding output, there's always a delay from when and so the delay of a buffered stream is always there anyway. But so it doesn't really add more than what is normal. But what you're doing then is that you're delivering the best bandwidth that you can without having to try and rely on the computer to try and do encoding, which is not really its primary function. It's kind of borrowing resources from other things it's trying to do.
And even though it has buffering, it won't magically make your internet faster, as we've been having to deal a little bit with here, and everyone's fighting for bandwidth from their house. Absolutely. And their less than ideal internet.
Well, we're finding that where I am, where I live, my neighborhood, a lot of guys work from home, but now it's they're working from home, their wives are working from home, the kids are working from home, and everybody's watching services. So yeah,
exactly.
It's a challenge
for the bandwidth. Last couple of questions. We talked about the bit rate. Yeah, is there a so it does have a media pool, right, where you can preload graphics. Is it just still images, or can you load any like a alpha channel video, or just still images?
So that one's still images, 20 still images, and but what we do, the HyperDeck, which also got an update for some new H.264 recording. If you were to load a graphic onto the HyperDeck and play it back, you could bring that in as an input. And for instance, there you go. I built a graphic off of my
Nice.
HyperDeck, and I just rolled it, and there you go. So that's another way to bring in a source with something else.
So was that
For some
just
moving
like
graphics.
an alpha channel QuickTime file, or is
Yeah,
that
so
some?
that
Okay.
I actually did that in DaVinci Resolve, obviously,
Mhm.
because it's our product
It's
and it's free. Uh, and so I just rendered it.
and the battle of the bandwidth continues as there you go. You're
So
back. Yeah.
yeah, so it's there's different ways to do that, but the background itself, because like I said, I'm using the keyer, and the chroma keyer is very good. It's the advanced chroma keyer in these
Hmm.
ATEM minis, which shares the same chroma keyer as our $10,000 ATEM constellation. So it's
Same technology
yeah.
in a small box. That's great. Is there one other question about workflow? Is there a way to sort of, if you did want to tap into streaming software like OBS or Wirecast, is there any sort of like round tripping workflow? If you want to kind of use the multicam aspect, use the hardware encoding aspect, but you maybe wanted to add some other elements to your broadcast, and is there a workflow that can?
So the I guess there's two ways to do it. Like for
Mhm.
instance, I have my whole ATEM Mini Pro here all set up. I can take this output, like I sent it to you, or I
Mhm.
can send that to OBS and then add things in OBS to stream out. Or if I had a computer that I needed stuff from OBS, I could take the output of that computer HDMI into the switcher and
Mhm.
use that as a source to feed into my switcher and then add from there. And of course the ATEM Mini and ATEM Mini Pro also have a picture-in-picture feature. So there is a one channel of DVE, digital video effects, so you could put a picture-in-picture as well. So I could show you me over the panel or something like that, so I could narrate in the corner while we talk about other things. And that's one of
Right.
the
Right.
reasons we created that. Was the initial A10 Mini was we thought would be targeted towards like gamers and things like that, so
Mhm.
they could show themselves playing game in the corner, that kind of thing.
And what have some of the use cases been in what you have found in expectations and reality and battle of the bandwidth continues? There you go.
There we are.
So what were some of the use cases that you found with you had your kind of gaming expectation, but what have you sort of found once the original ATEM's been in the field for
Right.
what,
So
half a year?
yeah, I mean, a lot of people are using them for to augment Zoom calls. So, for instance, if I'm doing a call, I can plug in a keynote, out of my computer and bring that in as a source where I could, do a PowerPoint keynote, whatever you want to call it, do that presentation, and then put me up in the corner so I could be more interactive with
Mm-hmm.
the audience. So people are using it for business there. A lot of churches are able to use it now, especially right now when some of them are doing empty services, but they
Mm-hmm.
could plug in a camera or two and have a service and then stream it. So we it's and now I know that some of the network shows they're doing broadcast from home. They're using a myriad of our boxes to try and get people
Yeah.
to get better quality audio and video and streaming and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely also a good time with the web presenter, which just makes it very easy. I'm using that right now to connect any type of camera and just turn it into a webcam. Like it just shows up next to my FaceTime camera. And when I'm on Zoom calls, they're like, "Why do you look like? What kind of filter do you have on?" Do you have anything in the pipeline as far as updates for the web presenter? Because right now it just caps out at 720. Anything with updates there?
Yeah, I think the hardware is fixed in that one, so I don't anticipate we do anything to that particular hardware at the age that it is. I mean, the one good thing about that product is, and you probably experienced it, because it has an SDI and an
Mm-hmm.
HDMI input. It's
Mm-hmm.
whatever you plug into it.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I know a lot of people always talk about the resolution that you stream.
Bandwidth continue. There we go.
Yeah,
Like
whether
yeah, resolution.
that's what I was going to say. When people talk about the streaming quality, whether the resolution is 720 or 1080
Mm-hmm.
or 4K or any of those, I mean, to me, I think that you know you, the best thing to do is to just be able to deliver a signal that doesn't get all choppy. And if you use a lower resolution, that might help. So,
Yeah, especially in this time with limited bandwidth, going at 720
exactly.
right now. Yeah.
Well, right.
Cool.
And assuming you have bandwidth, no one's really going to tell that much of a difference. A good camera, like people have noticed, and good audio always tells a better story.
Exactly. Whoa, I appreciate it so much, Bob. Thank you for coming on and sharing with the ATEM Mini. And this is available right now?
Yeah, so
It's
ATEM Mini Pros have hit the stores, this week, and so yeah, we're building them as fast as we can. But both models are out, and we're getting more web presenters, and just trying to get them out there for everybody.
And the original as well. I think a lot of the sites are saying coming end of April, so like that's coming back in stock as well.
They're all
Yep.
being made as fast as possible.
All right. Well, thank you, Bob. Take care. I appreciate it.